Greetings, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland and I'm in Chelsea, London, on Smith Street. And behind me you can see the house where L Travers lived for many years. So L Travers is best known as being the author of Mary Poppins. Now it surprises many people to know that she was actually Australian. So she's born in Queensland, Australia, in a small town where her father worked as a bank clerk. So L Travers, she was born there to British immigrant parents. Remember, in those days, almost everybody in Australia was of British descent, apart from the Aborigines. So her parents had grown up in England and her grandparents in Ireland. Her father had been a bank clerk, but had fouled up a lot. Sorry, a bank manager, being demoted to clerk. So they were middle class, but had somewhat sort of straitened circumstances. And she had a few siblings. Anyway, she decided to make her way as an actress, and she was always someone with literary tastes. And shortly after the First World War, she was an actress with a repertory company traveling around the Antipodes. And then in her mid-20s, she came here to London. Well, actually, she was coming up for 30 at that stage. So Australia and the UK were much more closely linked by ties of blood and sympathy in those days, even though it was a very lengthy voyage. She regarded the British Isles as the mother country. So she came over here and lived mainly in London, a little bit outside London sometimes, again making her way in literary circles. So she had a long number of relationships with men, but never married. She did live with a woman for several years, and it's unclear whether they were friends or more than just good friends. She adopted W.B. Yeats's grandson, who'd been born outside of marriage. And of course, remember, until say the 70s, being born outside of marriage was considered very disadvantageous, very embarrassing. So she brought this boy up as her own, but this boy didn't know his true identity till someone came round and said, no, I'm your long lost brother, and it was a bit of an ordeal for him. But anyway, so L Travers, she'd adopted that as a nom de plume. Her surname is actually Goff, G-O-F-F, and indeed she'd changed her Christian name. She kept her original middle name, Linden. So Chelsea is a very she area nowadays. In the 1920s, it was not as upscale as it is now. There were working class districts to Chelsea. It wasn't so prohibitively expensive. Chelsea Football Club, of course, been founded in 1905, not very far away. So there was a large proletarian contingent. But anyway, a lot of very affluent families lived hard by. And she wasn't mixing with them so much as knowing the nannies, who were from probably a similar background to herself, as in solidly middle class, but their finances were not good, and that's why they had to become nannies. So she wrote Mary Poppins about this idyllic nanny, but there were darker sides to her persona, which in the novel, which don't make it into the film. And actually, there's more than one novel; it's a series. So then it had been a stage play in the early 60s in the West End in London, till obviously finally in the mid-60s it was turned into a Hollywood picture, an absolute blockbuster, with Julie Andrews in the title role, who was obviously very gifted at cantercling, and indeed Dick Van Dyke, that American actor, who notoriously murdered the Cockney accent, as that's the working class London accent. If he couldn't do it at all, wouldn't it be better for him just not to attempt a Cockney accent? We'll just say, have one line, he's an American, he's living in London. Fine, that explains it. Rather than trying to do the Cockney accent and just get it wrong. It's really the textbook example of how not to do it. The pragmatics of it are wrong for Cockney. Say the song "Let's Go Fly a Kite." Of course, in British, it's "Let's go and fly a kite." But there we are. Overall, it's a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious song, all singing, all dancing, and is a hit around the world to this day, which is why there's a latest iteration of the Mary Poppins scene. Indeed, there was a nanny agency called Mary Poppins. When I was carrying a certain sort of bag, my pupils tell me I was like Mary Poppins. So they chose Julie Andrews, and she'd given birth not long before. And she wondered whether she could do it in view of her pregnancy. That actually delayed production to allow her to give birth and lose a bit of weight. So she's very mumsy, very wholesome and clean living, and there's no sexuality to her character. She usually played those sort of parts. But some people say, well, they just didn't allow her to be that way. But it's very much a family film, so there's none of that. about this very wealthy family. Their dad's making a fortune in banking, but there is some other unhappiness in their life, and she teaches them ways to find the glee of being alive. Anyway, so she was a very wealthy woman because of the royalties of that L Travers, and she lived on in London till she died in 1996. She died at the age of almost 97, and indeed she's buried in St Mary's Church, Twickenham. So that is the all-conquering L Travers.